The human walked slowly through the crowded alien market. Strange voices filled the air, shouting prices, calling for customers, arguing over coins. The smell of old food and metal dust mixed together, creating a place that felt alive but also broken. Stalls were filled with junk, stolen parts, and cheap food that barely looked safe to eat. Most travelers kept their heads down. No one wanted to get noticed here. The human was not new to rough places, but something about this market made him uneasy. He had come only to find spare parts for his ship, nothing more. He planned to buy what he needed and leave quickly, but fate does not always follow plans. Near the corner of the broken wall, he saw her. A small alien girl sitting on the ground, her knees pulled close to her chest. Her skin was pale, almost gray, and her clothes were torn and dirty. Her hair hung over her face, and her arms were so thin, they looked like they had no strength left. She was not like the other sellers or buyers. She had nothing to trade. In her hands was a small empty bowl. She lifted it when someone passed by, but nobody stopped. Most people pretended she did not exist. Others sneered or laughed. Some even threw small stones at her feet as if mocking her. The human paused. His first thought was that she was simply another beggar, forgotten in this dark place. But then he noticed her eyes. When she looked up, her eyes were not empty like most broken souls he had seen. They were filled with something different. A quiet fire, a hidden story. The girl whispered something, her voice almost lost under the market noise. "Please, food." The human hesitated. He was not a rich man. He could not save everyone in the galaxy. Yet for some reason he could not walk away. Something deep inside him, something human, made him step closer. He reached into his bag and pulled out a piece of bread he had saved. It was not much, but when he offered it, the girl's hand shook as she took it. She ate quickly like someone who had not tasted real food in days. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice fragile but clear. The nearby aliens laughed. "Stupid human," one of them said. "Why waste food on trash?" "She's nothing." Less than nothing, the human ignored them. He crouched down, looking at the girl. "What's your name?" he asked softly. She hesitated as if afraid to speak. Finally, she whispered, "Lyra." The human nodded. "I'm Daniel." For the first time, the girl gave a small smile, weak but real. Daniel looked around. The market was loud, dangerous, and filled with cruel eyes. He could see that if he left her here, she might not survive another day. But should he help more? He told himself he only came for parts. Helping her could bring trouble. Yet when she looked at him again, her eyes seemed to beg silently, "Don't leave me." He sighed and stood up. "Come with me," he said quietly. Lyra froze. "With you?" "Yes," Daniel said. "At least for tonight. It's not safe here." The girl slowly stood up, her legs shaking as if she had not walked properly for days. She followed him, staying close like a shadow afraid of being lost. As they walked through the market streets, Daniel noticed strange things. Some aliens glanced at Lyra and then quickly turned away, whispering to each other. Others looked angry, almost fearful. He did not understand. Why would anyone fear such a weak girl? They reached a small inn at the edge of the market. Daniel paid a few coins for a room. The owner gave him a long, suspicious look but said nothing. Inside the room, Daniel let the girl sit on the bed while he set down his bag. She kept her head low, hands folded in her lap. She seemed ready to run if he made one wrong move. "You don't have to be afraid," Daniel said. "I won't hurt you." She looked up for a moment, then back down. "People always hurt," she whispered. Daniel felt a weight in his chest. He did not know her story yet, but he knew enough to understand she had suffered more than most. He gave her a cup of water, and she drank slowly, her thin fingers gripping it tightly. Night came. The noise of the market grew quiet outside, leaving only distant echoes. Daniel lay down on the floor, giving the bed to Lyra. For a while, the room was silent, but then he heard soft sounds. The girl was whispering in her sleep, crying, calling out names he did not know. Daniel turned his head, listening. Her voice was weak, but her words carried fear. "No, don't, please. I'll be good. Don't take me." She shook, clutching the blanket tightly. Her skin glowed faintly in the dark, strange marks appearing across her arms like lines of hidden fire. Daniel sat up, startled. He had thought she was only a poor beggar. But this was something else. Something more, he whispered to himself. "Who are you really, Lyra?" The girl trembled, still caught in her nightmare. And in that moment, Daniel realized the truth. She was not what she seemed. The morning sun rose slowly above the alien market, painting the broken buildings in dull gold. The air smelled of smoke and dust. Traders shouted again, calling for buyers as if the night had never happened. But inside the small room at the edge of the market, Daniel sat awake, staring at the strange girl who still slept on the bed. Her name was Lyra. She looked weak, fragile, like any poor beggar child. Yet the night before, Daniel had seen the faint glow on her skin, marks that appeared like hidden fire. That image stayed in his mind. He told himself it could have been his imagination. But deep inside, he knew it was real. When Lyra finally woke, she sat up slowly, her eyes searching the room in fear, as if expecting chains or blows. Daniel gave her a piece of bread. She ate carefully, always watching him, waiting for him to show the same cruelty others had shown. "Do you want to leave this city?" Daniel asked after a long silence. Her hands froze. Her eyes widened, and for a moment she looked like she might cry. "Leave?" she whispered. You would take me?" Daniel hesitated. He had not planned to say those words. He only came here for ship parts. He was supposed to leave today alone. Taking this girl would mean risk, danger, and questions he could not answer. But when he saw the desperate hope in her eyes, his heart made the choice his mind was afraid of. "Yes," he said simply. "But only if you trust me." Lyra lowered her head. Trust was not easy for her. Yet something in his voice was different from the lies and cruelty she had known. She nodded slowly. Daniel stood, ready to guide her out of the inn. But as they opened the door, the innkeeper's eyes narrowed. He whispered to another worker, who quickly slipped out into the street. Daniel noticed but said nothing. His instincts told him trouble was coming. They walked through the market together. The people stared. Some whispered, others laughed. "Human fool," one alien spat. "He carries trash like treasure." Another called out, "Better throw her away before she curses you." Daniel ignored them, but Lyra trembled beside him. She pulled her hood lower over her face as if hiding from invisible eyes. "Why are they so angry with you?" Daniel asked softly while leading her through a side street. Lyra struggled to find words. "They think I am nothing, poor, dirty, cursed." Her voice was flat, but Daniel could hear the pain behind it. He did not press her for more. He only knew that no child should carry such weight. As they turned a corner, Daniel suddenly felt a hand grab his shoulder. A tall alien guard blocked his path. His armor was dented, his face twisted with arrogance. "You there, human," the guard growled. "That girl. She belongs here. Leave her." Daniel stood firm. "She belongs to no one," the guard sneered. "Everything in this city belongs to someone. She is marked. The poor thing isn't yours to carry away." Lyra shrank behind Daniel, clutching his coat. Her voice shook. "Please, don't let them take me." Daniel looked at the guard's sharp weapon, then at the small hand holding on to him. He could walk away now. Pretend he never saw her. It would be safer. It would be easier. But a voice inside him whispered, "If you leave her now, she will not live to see another sunrise." Daniel's choice was clear. He stepped forward, his eyes hard. "She's under my protection. If you want her, you'll have to fight me." The guard laughed, raising his weapon, but the sound of another whistle echoed down the street. More soldiers were arriving. Daniel's stomach tightened. He knew they were not ordinary guards. They were hunting her. "Run," Daniel whispered to Lyra. She shook her head, frozen in fear. "Run," he repeated, pulling her hand. Together they darted into the maze of alleys, boots slamming against stone as shouts followed them. The market became chaos behind them, voices shouting orders, soldiers spreading out. Daniel dragged Lyra through narrow passages past broken doors and abandoned houses. He did not know the city well, but he knew enough about survival. Finally, they reached a shadowed corner hidden behind piles of scrap metal. Lyra leaned against the wall, gasping for breath. They're after me," she whispered. Daniel looked at her, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. "Who are they? Why do they want you?" Her eyes filled with fear and sorrow. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, unable to speak. Daniel waited, but all she whispered was one trembling word. "Hunters." The sound of footsteps echoed nearby. Daniel tightened his grip on the small knife he carried. He knew the choice he made had already changed his path. He could no longer leave her. The human had chosen kindness, but kindness had turned into danger. And somewhere deep inside, he felt that this poor alien girl was not who she seemed at all. The alley was quiet now, except for the distant shouts of soldiers searching the market. Daniel pressed his back against the cold stone wall, his knife still in hand, listening for footsteps. Beside him, Lyra hugged her knees, her small frame trembling. For a long time, neither spoke. The silence felt heavy, filled with questions Daniel wanted to ask but didn't. Finally, when the noise of the search faded into the distance, he turned toward her. "They called you marked," he said quietly. "What does that mean?" Lyra shook her head, her hair falling across her pale face. "I cannot say. If I tell you, you will leave me too." Daniel studied her. She was afraid, not only of the soldiers but of him, the one person who had shown her kindness. He wanted to push her for answers, but he saw the fear in her eyes, so he sighed and lowered his knife. "I didn't leave you in the market," he said firmly, "and I'm not leaving you now. Whatever you are, whatever they want, you're not alone." Her lips trembled. She nodded but said nothing more. That night, Daniel found a new hiding place in the ruins of an abandoned warehouse. The roof was half collapsed, the walls scarred with blaster fire, but it was shelter. He made a small fire in a broken barrel and gave Lyra the last of his dried food. She ate slowly, as if each bite carried weight. When the flames burned low, Daniel lay against the wall, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. Lyra curled up close to the fire, her thin blanket wrapped tightly around her. For a while, the only sound was the crackle of burning wood. Then came the whispers. Daniel opened his eyes. At first, he thought it was the wind moving through broken glass. But no, it was her. Lyra's lips moved in her sleep, her voice soft but desperate. "No, don't take me, please. I'll be good." Her body shook. Her hands clawed at the blanket, pulling it to her chest. Daniel sat up quickly, alarmed. He reached toward her, then froze. Her skin was glowing. Strange marks spread across her arms and neck, lines of pale blue fire that pulsed with every heartbeat. They formed patterns almost like writing, ancient and unreadable. The glow lit her face, and Daniel saw tears rolling down her cheeks even in sleep. "Lyra," he whispered, her eyes shot open. She gasped and scrambled back, hitting the wall. The glow faded, leaving only faint scars like burned skin. Her breathing was wild, her eyes wide with terror. "Don't tell them," she cried. "Please don't tell them what you saw." Daniel held up his hands, calm but firm. "I won't, but you need to explain. What are you?" Her whole body trembled. For a moment she looked like she would run, even though there was nowhere to go. Then she lowered her head, her voice breaking. "I was never poor. Not truly, I was hidden." She struggled to find the right words. "Long ago, before my family fell, these marks were a gift. But when the hunters came, when the Empire destroyed us, I was forced to hide. They burned away my name, took my power. Now I am nothing, a beggar, a curse." Daniel listened in silence. He did not understand all of it, but he understood enough. She was not just a starving girl. She was someone important, someone dangerous to those soldiers. "You're running from them," he said slowly. She nodded, tears dripping onto her hands. "If they find me, they will finish what they started. No one helps me. No one dares. They believe I bring death." Daniel leaned forward, his voice steady. "But I helped you." She looked at him, her eyes shining with fear and hope. "Then they will kill you too." For a long time, neither spoke. The fire died to glowing embers, leaving the warehouse in shadow. Daniel thought about his ship waiting at the port. He thought about how simple his life could have been if he had just walked away yesterday. But when he saw the way she hugged herself, so small and broken yet carrying secrets larger than she could bear, he knew he could not turn back. "You're wrong," he said finally. "They won't kill me, because I won't let them." Lyra's lips parted as if she could not believe his words. Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were not only of fear. She whispered, "Why? Why would a human care for me?" Daniel gave a small, tired smile. "Because kindness is the only weapon I have. And sometimes, it's enough." Her breath caught. She closed her eyes and leaned her head against the wall as if those simple words had lifted a weight she thought would never leave. Outside, the city stirred with noise once more. The hunters had not stopped searching. And in the shadows of the galaxy, the truth about Lyra was only beginning to rise. Daniel tightened his grip on his bag and whispered to himself, "This girl, she's not what she seems." And now, Her fate is tied to mine. The night had barely ended when the silence broke. Daniel and Lyra were still inside the ruined warehouse, the last embers of the fire glowing faintly. Daniel packed his bag, ready to move. He knew they could not stay in one place for long. The soldiers, hunters as Lyra had called them, would not stop until they found her. Then faintly Daniel heard it. Heavy boots on the broken streets outside, voices barking orders in a language sharp and cruel, the sound of metal scraping stone as weapons were drawn. Lyra stiffened. Her eyes widened with terror, and she whispered a single word that froze Daniel's blood. "They're here." Daniel grabbed her hand. "Stay close. Don't make a sound." They slipped through a broken side door, moving into the narrow alleys. The hunters were spreading out across the district, their armor glinting in the weak sunlight. Their scanners beeped as they searched, tracking something unseen. Lyra trembled beside him. Daniel could feel her fear through her grip. He whispered, "Why are they so desperate to catch you?" She shook her head, voice barely audible. "Because I am the last. If they erase me, no one will ever remember my people." Daniel's heart pounded. He wanted to ask more, but there was no time. The sharp sound of boots echoed behind them. "Target detected!" A hunter's voice roared. Daniel pulled Lyra forward. They ran. The chase tore through the city. Locals scattered as the hunters stormed through the market, knocking over stalls, pushing aside anyone in their path. Daniel dragged Lyra into side streets, through shadows, over broken fences, but the hunters were trained. Every time he thought they had escaped, another squad appeared ahead, cutting them off. "Daniel," Lyra gasped, her voice breaking. "Leave me. If they catch me, at least you will live." He spun toward her, his eyes blazing. "I didn't risk everything to give you up now." "You're not alone anymore," her breath caught. No one had ever said those words to her. Not since her family was destroyed. They ducked into an old tunnel beneath the city, the air damp and filled with the stench of mold. The ground shook as heavy boots followed. Lyra stumbled, but Daniel pulled her up, forcing her to keep running. Behind them, the hunters' lights cut through the darkness like knives. "Faster," Daniel urged, but Lyra suddenly froze. Her marks, the glowing patterns Daniel had seen before, were coming alive again. Her arms lit with pale blue fire, and her breathing grew shallow. She pressed her hands against the wall, her body shaking violently. "No," she whispered. "Not now. I can't control it." The wall beneath her hands cracked, glowing with the same strange light. Daniel's eyes widened. He had no idea what power she carried, but it was not something ordinary. "Lyra, listen to me, focus. We need to move, not stay." She shook her head, her face pale. "If I use it, they will know exactly where we are. If I don't, we will die." The footsteps drew closer. The hunters were entering the tunnel, their voices echoing. Daniel made his choice. "Then use it." Lyra closed her eyes. The glow spread through her arms, and with a sharp cry she slammed her hands against the wall. The tunnel shook violently, stones crashing down. Dust filled the air as part of the passage collapsed, sealing off the hunters. Daniel grabbed her before she fell, her body weak from the effort. "You saved us," he whispered, but she shook her head, tears falling. "No, I showed them where I am." "They will not stop now. They know I still live." They emerged from the tunnel into the outer ruins of the city. The horizon stretched wide, broken towers and abandoned ships scattered across the desert plain. Daniel lifted her into his arms. She was too weak to walk. He carried her across the sand, every step heavy, his eyes scanning for danger. Behind them, the faint roar of engines echoed. The hunters were regrouping. They were coming again. Lyra opened her eyes, whispering through her exhaustion. "Why do you keep saving me? You don't even know who I am." Daniel tightened his grip. "I don't need to know. I only know you're worth saving." Her tears slipped down her cheeks. But this time they carried something more than fear. Hope. Far in the distance, the hunters released a flare into the sky, marking their position. Daniel knew they had little time before the city itself turned against them. He needed to find a ship, a way out, before the net closed completely. The desert wind howled around them. The chase was far from over. And as the first hunter ships appeared on the horizon, Daniel realized one truth that shook him to his core. This was no longer just about kindness. This was a war over a secret that could change the galaxy, and he was now part of it. The desert stretched endlessly, a sea of sand and broken metal ruins. Daniel carried Lyra in his arms, his steps heavy, his throat dry. Behind them, The faint hum of hunter ships echoed across the wind. They were gaining ground. Lyra's body felt light, almost weightless, but Daniel knew it was because she had little strength left. Her face was pale, her breath shallow, and yet her faint glowing marks still flickered like dying embers. "We need shelter," Daniel muttered. He scanned the horizon, spotting the remains of an old watchtower leaning against the sky. With no better option, he carried her inside. The tower was broken, its walls scarred by old battles. Sand filled the floor and the roof was mostly gone, but it was quiet for now. Daniel laid her down gently against the wall. She opened her eyes weakly. "You should have left me." Daniel shook his head firmly. "Stop saying that. I didn't save you just to abandon you later." Her lips trembled. "If you knew the truth." "You might." Daniel crouched beside her. "Then tell me." "No more secrets." "Who are you, really?" For a long time, silence hung in the air. Lyra looked away, tears gathering in her eyes. Her hands clutched the torn fabric of her cloak as if holding on to the last piece of her disguise. Finally, she whispered, "I am not a poor beggar. I am not cursed. My true name is Lyra Varys, last daughter of the Varys line." Daniel frowned. The name meant nothing to him. "Varys?" She nodded. "We were rulers once, not of worlds but of voices. My family was one of the great houses, guardians of knowledge older than empires. We carried the light of our people, and then they came." Her voice cracked, but she continued. "The hunters, agents of the empire that wanted silence, not knowledge. They slaughtered us, burned our cities. I was a child when I was hidden away. My powers were sealed to protect me, but the seal is weak now. That is why the marks glow. They can sense me when I use them." Daniel stared, stunned. He had expected many things, that she was a thief, a runaway slave, maybe even some outlaw. But this royal blood, a legacy hunted across the stars? "Why didn't you tell me before?" he asked. She turned her face toward him, her tears finally falling. "Because everyone who learns the truth dies for it, and I couldn't bear the thought of you dying too." Daniel reached out and placed his hand on hers. "I'm already in this fight, Lyra. The moment I chose to help you, my fate changed. So don't carry this alone anymore." Her eyes widened, shimmering with both fear and something new. Trust. Suddenly the ground shook. A hunter ship roared overhead, its shadow covering the tower. The building trembled as the sound of soldiers echoed outside. They had found them. Lyra clutched Daniel's hand tightly. "They want me because of what I carry. Not just power, knowledge. Inside me is a memory seal. It holds the last record of my people's archives. If the Empire destroys me, it will be gone forever." Daniel's chest tightened. He realized now that she was not just a girl to save. She was a living key, the last voice of a people erased from history. The hunters shouted outside, preparing to storm the tower. Daniel gritted his teeth. "Then we don't let them take you, not now." "Not ever." He stood, drawing his small blaster and knife. He had faced battles before, but never against odds like this. The doors shook as the hunters rammed them. Lyra forced herself to sit up, her marks glowing faintly again. "Daniel," she whispered, "if they capture me, promise me you'll end it. Don't let them use me." He turned sharply, anger flashing in his eyes. "No, don't ever ask me that again. You're not dying here. You're not dying at all. Do you understand?" Her lips parted, her heart racing at the strength in his voice. For the first time in years, she felt something she thought had been lost forever. Hope. The doors broke. Hunters stormed inside, weapons raised. Daniel stepped in front of Lyra, ready to fight. The leader of the hunters sneered. "Step aside, human. She is property of the Empire." Daniel's voice was steel. "She's no one's property. Not while I breathe." The hunter raised his weapon. "Then you will not breathe for long." The battle began. Blaster fire lit the ruined tower. Daniel dodged, firing back, every move fueled not by duty but by determination. He fought like a man with nothing to lose and everything to protect. Behind him, Lyra's glow grew stronger. Her marks flared, the seal inside her weakening further. She pressed her hands to the ground and a wave of energy shook the room, knocking hunters off their feet. The leader staggered, staring at her. "Impossible. You should not have power left." Lyra's eyes blazed with tears and fury. "You took everything from me, but you will not take him." Daniel's heart pounded. He realized now this was not the end of her strength. It was the beginning. When the dust settled, several hunters lay broken, the survivors retreating outside. The leader shouted for reinforcements. Daniel knelt beside Lyra, who was trembling, her glow fading. She looked at him with a faint, exhausted smile. "You see now," she whispered. "I am not who you thought. Not poor, not weak, but cursed with a truth that will kill us both." Daniel shook his head fiercely. "No, you are Lyra, and you're worth every risk." Outside, the hunters regrouped. The chase was not over. It had only just begun. But in that ruined tower, the truth had been revealed, and nothing would ever be the same again. The ruined tower smelled of smoke and dust. The hunters had pulled back for the moment, regrouping outside, but Daniel knew it was only a pause. They would return in greater numbers. Inside, Lyra leaned weakly against the cracked wall, her glowing marks fading. She looked exhausted, her breath shallow, her body trembling after using her power. Daniel knelt beside her, checking the faint cuts on her arms. "You shouldn't have pushed yourself," he said firmly. "You could have burned out." Her lips curved into a weak smile. "If I hadn't, you would be dead." "I couldn't lose you." Daniel froze at her words. There was no hesitation in her tone, no mask. For the first time, he realized how deeply she had begun to trust him. As night fell again, Daniel guided her out of the tower through a hidden passage. The desert air was cold, the stars sharp against the black sky. They walked slowly, staying close together, avoiding the hunters' searchlights that swept across the ruins. "Where are we going?" Lyra asked, her voice small but steady. "My ship," Daniel replied. "It's old, but it'll fly. Once we get off this rock, we'll have a chance." Lyra hesitated. "You could leave without me. The hunters want me, not you. You'd be safe if you let me go." Daniel glanced at her sharply. "Safe? Maybe, but I wouldn't be human anymore. I'd just be another coward who turned away from someone who needed help." "That's not who I am," her eyes glistened. She had heard many words in her short, painful life. None had ever sounded like his. They stopped by the remains of an abandoned ship hull, using it as cover. Daniel started a small fire from scrap wood. Lyra sat close, her hands outstretched to the warmth. For a long time they sat in silence, only the crackling of fire between them. Then Lyra spoke softly. "My people believed trust was sacred. It was not given easily, but once given, it could never be broken. That is why I fear it. Everyone I trusted is gone." Daniel looked at her, his expression serious. "Do you trust me?" Her voice trembled. "Yes, and that terrifies me." He reached out, gently covering her hands with his. "Then let it terrify you. But don't run from it. Because I trust you too." Her eyes widened. She lowered her head, and for the first time she allowed herself to cry. Not the silent tears of fear, but the release of a burden carried too long. Daniel didn't speak. He simply let her cry, his hand never leaving hers. Later, when the fire dimmed, Lyra leaned her head against his shoulder. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Daniel, why are you different? Humans are not known for risking themselves for strangers. Why did you choose me?" Daniel's gaze stayed on the dark horizon. "Because I've seen enough cruelty in this galaxy to know it doesn't need more. If one act of kindness can change someone's life, then maybe it can change mine too." Her chest tightened at his words. She had been told she was cursed, worthless, a burden. But in his eyes she was worth protecting. For the first time since her family's fall, she felt alive. Their quiet moment ended when the distant roar of engines split the silence. The hunters were moving again, closer than before. Daniel helped her to her feet. "We need to keep moving." She nodded, determination replacing her fear. "I will not slow you down." They traveled through the night, avoiding patrols, weaving through canyons of broken stone. The stars guided them, the desert stretching endlessly. When Lyra stumbled, Daniel steadied her. When Daniel's steps faltered, Lyra whispered words of courage in her ancient tongue. Slowly a bond grew, no longer just protector and protected, but partners in survival. Near dawn, they reached a ridge overlooking the landing port where Daniel's ship waited. The old freighter sat hidden among wrecks, its hull scarred but intact. Relief washed over Daniel, but Lyra's hand tightened on his arm. "Daniel, once we leave, you will carry my fate with you. The hunters will never stop. The Empire will hunt you too." Daniel looked at her with steady eyes. "Then let them hunt. I'd rather fight with you than live safe without you." Her heart ached at his words. She realized now that his kindness had become something deeper, a bond unshakable, a trust she could no longer deny. She whispered almost to herself, "You are the reason I still believe in hope." Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then hold on to it. because hope is the only weapon stronger than fear. As the first light of morning spread across the desert, the hunters' ships appeared again in the distance, their engines roaring like thunder. Daniel and Lyra stood side by side on the ridge, looking down at the ship that might save them, or doom them. The bond between them was no longer fragile. It was forged in fire, sealed in trust, and in that moment both knew, whatever awaited them, they would face it together. The desert dawn burned red, a sky filled with dust and fire. From the ridge, Daniel and Lyra watched the hunters' ships descend like dark hawks, their engines rumbling across the barren land. The ground trembled beneath their weight. Daniel's old freighter sat in the port below, their only chance of escape. But the hunters were already moving in, soldiers spreading out in armored lines. They were not just searching anymore. They were here to finish it. Lyra's hand shook as she clutched his sleeve. "Daniel, there are too many." Daniel kept his eyes on the enemy. His heart pounded, but his voice was calm. "Maybe, but I didn't come this far to give up." He checked his blaster, knowing it wasn't enough against an army. Still, he stood tall, his body between her and the danger. Lyra's marks began to glow faintly again. She closed her eyes, her voice shaking. "If I unleash my power, the seal will break completely. I don't know what will happen. Maybe it will destroy me." Daniel turned to her, his hand firm on her shoulder. "Then we do it together. You're not alone anymore. Whatever happens, I'm with you." Her breath caught. She nodded, tears shining in her eyes. But this time they were not from fear. The hunters advanced, their leader stepping forward. His voice boomed across the sands. "Surrender, Varys child. The Empire does not forgive traitors. You are the last, and today your line ends." Lyra's lips pressed together. For years she had run, hidden, begged, believing she was cursed. Now with Daniel beside her, she finally lifted her head. "No," she whispered. "Today, my people rise." The marks across her body ignited like fire, glowing brighter than ever. The air around her shimmered, filled with raw energy. The hunters stopped for a moment, fear flickering in their eyes. Daniel stepped closer, steadying her. "Let it out. Trust yourself. Trust us." The ground split open as Lyra raised her hands, ancient symbols burning across the sand. A wave of energy burst outward, throwing hunters off their feet. Their weapons sparked uselessly, short-circuited by the power. Daniel fired at the nearest soldiers, covering her as she focused. Together they turned the battlefield into chaos, her light burning, his courage unbroken. But the leader pressed forward, shielded by heavy armor. He struck Daniel, sending him crashing to the ground. The world spun, his blaster flying from his hand. Lyra screamed his name. The seal inside her shattered. Her glow exploded into brilliance, blinding the hunters. Wings of light formed behind her, not of flesh, but of pure energy, the true form of her bloodline. She was no longer a beggar, no longer cursed. She was Lyra Varys, last daughter of a fallen house, reborn in fire. The leader raised his weapon to strike her, but she stopped him with a single outstretched hand. Energy wrapped around him, breaking his armor, shattering his pride. With a final cry, he fell to the sands, defeated. The hunters, seeing their leader fall, fled in terror. Their ships rose into the sky, retreating. The desert grew silent once more. Lyra collapsed to her knees, her glow fading. Daniel, bruised but alive, crawled to her side and caught her before she hit the ground. "You did it," he whispered, holding her close. "You changed everything." She looked at him with tired eyes, her voice soft. "No, Daniel. You changed everything. Your kindness lit the fire I thought was gone. You gave me back my name." Daniel smiled faintly, brushing the dust from her face. "Then keep it. The galaxy needs to hear it again." She leaned against him, too weak to stand, but her heart felt lighter than it ever had. For the first time since her family's death, she believed in tomorrow. They reached his freighter together, moving slowly, step by step. The ship's old hull groaned as it powered on, lifting them into the sky. From above, the desert looked endless, but for them, it was no longer a prison. It was the beginning of something new. Lyra sat beside him in the cockpit, her small hand resting on his arm. "Where will we go now?" Daniel stared at the stars ahead, a smile tugging at his lips. "Anywhere they don't expect. Anywhere we can write a new story. Together." Her marks flickered faintly once more, but this time they didn't frighten her. They reminded her of who she was, and who she was becoming. And as the freighter disappeared into the starlit sky, both of them knew the fate of one human and one alien girl had been forever changed by a single act of kindness. and the galaxy would never be the same again.